So you got some crypto, and now you're trying to chase that sweet, sweet yield that everybody keeps on talking about. Well, today I'm going to talk at sort of a high level about what sort of services you can utilize and where to continue your research if you're interested in this sort of thing. And I'm going to break up this video into basically two sections. First, if you're a beginner and you're more comfortable with centralized platforms, then the beginning of the video is for you. If, however, you're trying to branch out and get involved in DeFi and yield platforms that exist outside of the control of one central entity, then you can skip ahead to the next section where I'm going to be talking about that. If you've heard any of my videos, then you know how I feel about centralized finance. Don't like it. In fact, if you like centralized finance, then why the f are you in crypto anyway? Sort of the whole point is to get away from that sort of thing. But I understand if you're not incredibly technical and you don't trust yourself to be able to audit the code that you're interacting with, you don't really understand how smart contracts work, then, a safer, more conservative position is one to look to the centralized lending services. And honestly, they're all pretty straightforward. My main recommendation would be either to use Gemini or BlockFi. They're both focused on regulatory compliance, and they have big private insurance plans to protect themselves in the case of a hack or something like that. Not only that, but they have all the features necessary to keep your account secure, even if you're giving them your coins in order to then re-lend out. But let me convince you why you should not use those services. And not those services in particular, any centralized crypto lending platform. So this would be BlockFi, Celsius, Crypto.com, especially, them, Nexo, HODLNOT, uHodler, and any number of other ones that are out there. Voyager. And like I said earlier, if you've seen any of my videos, then you probably know what I'm about to say. Redundancy alert. Redundancy alert. I've said it many times before. Not as many times as, say, Nate Martin of 99 Bitcoins has killed a young woman in cold blood, but certainly quite a few times. With centralized services, there is still risk. It's not the same risk as in a DeFi service, right? There's not going to be any smart contract bugs in a centralized lending platform, but they open you up to central counterparty risk. For instance, most of these firms say that they have some sort of hot wallet, cold wallet balance. But what they don't tell you is then they lend out those funds that are supposed to be in a cold wallet, and they're not doing security audits on the people that they're supposed to be lending to. You look at the example of Celsius and BadgerDAO. Celsius was using user funds in a DeFi protocol, which maybe they're more qualified to do, but either way, they got hacked and lost millions of dollars in Bitcoin, which their insurance covered, but it presents the second type of risk, which is liquidity risk. In a world where the general stock market crashes, or you see a tightening of Fed policy or something like that, money just isn't quite as loose, it's not as easy to get as much capital, then you can start seeing some of these debts becoming due, and there's a risk that these central counterparties can't pay out to their debtors, and you may be on the hook for their bad bets in much the same way that the US was as a result of the Lehman Brothers bad bets. I think it looks an awful lot like the housing crisis in 2008, which is why I prefer to have custody of my own assets. Apart from that, there's also regulatory risk. If you act like a centralized bank, then you're gonna get regulated like a centralized bank, and so the SEC is gonna come after you. Hi, BlockFi and Celsius. But centralized crypto lending platforms also engage in KYC practices, which many people would say is probably an okay thing. I guess every bank does it, but it means that they can censor transactions. If it ever, I don't know, talk to the fucking January 6th protesters. Not that I'm saying I agree with what they did. I think they should have burned it all down, but it's neither here nor there. The point is, they're all terrorists now, and so it's gonna be hard for them to get bank accounts in the future. Should we be giving governments that kind of power? Well, if you're using a centralized crypto lending platform, then you're tacitly saying yes. Like I said, if all you're in is traditional finance, if you're much more comfortable with a centralized entity and you don't have any of the same sort of anti-government ideations that I do, then it's probably fine. But there is an alternative, and that alternative is decentralized finance, often shortened as DeFi. I'm gonna break these up into just three general categories, which is crypto lending platforms, decentralized lending protocols, or liquidity protocols. The best example I can give of which is Aave, where you can get APY for allowing people to borrow your custodied assets. You can either stake them for a term, at the end of which you'll be able to unstake all of your coins and take them back into your custody, or you can keep them in variable accounts where you can unstake them at any time. One of the better ways to do that is what's called yield farming, and Curve.fi is one of the best places to do that, where they will automatically route your cryptocurrency through different pools in order to optimize the amount of APY you get on those assets that are being staked on their platform. Their user interface is, reminiscent of early 90s Windows, and so maybe not as easy as, say, a BlockFi or Celsius, but you will get some pretty good rates on some pretty interesting cryptos. But it is a little bit more advanced than simply depositing something into a yield account. Next up is liquidity mining, and this is enabled by the service Uniswap. head over to uniswap.org. It'll allow you to connect your Web3 wallet and swap your Ethereum for basically any token on the market. You can do the same over at PancakeSwap for any asset on Binance Smart Chain, but you shouldn't, and don't buy things on Binance Smart Chain. Not financial advice, just looking out for you. Don't want you to get those sweet Binance Smart Chain gains. But Uniswap is functionally an automated market maker and liquidity pool provider that sits on the Ethereum network. And if you want a more detailed explanation, you can go to this video here that I did a while back on how automated market makers work and how the constant product rule allows people to create liquidity pools and allows the pool itself to extract profit from the swaps. Now you'll notice that basically everything that I've talked about so far has been on the Ethereum mainnet. And one of the problems with the Ethereum mainnet is that the gas fees have gotten a little bit ridiculous as of late. Even with the current price downtrend, you can see that a swap or an add or remove liquidity on Uniswap is going to cost you on average $46, which is a big chunk if you're only depositing a little bit of money. The solution to this are what are called layer 2s. So layer 2s would be something like Polygon or Loopring, which is a ZK rollup. Arbitrum, which I believe is an optimistic rollup, as well as Optimism, which is also an optimistic rollup. Most of these services are either in beta or have just launched, and so we haven't seen a lot of contracts deploy to the layer 2. But a quick way of explaining what it is it's like a zip of a bunch of transactions. So if you want to go over to the wallet.polygon, you can start interacting with the Polygon version of, for instance, Aave, which has its contract deployed on Polygon. In fact, Uniswap just voted to deploy itself on Polygon as well. And the reason it makes it more efficient is that it takes a bunch of transactions that happen on its chain and then it compresses them and includes them in just one transaction in a block for Ethereum. Generally speaking, it's not quite that simple, but it's like zipping a bunch of transactions so you can include more in each block that's produced on the Ethereum mainnet. So it means that if you have a whole bunch of transactions that are now operating as only one transaction, then you can distribute the gas fee of that one transaction to all the transactions that are happening on the layer 2 network, making all of those transactions a little bit more efficient and reducing the gas overall for anybody who's using that system. So a layer 2 is basically a way of bringing down the cost of interacting with the Ethereum mainnet, which means that you can actually do things like Ethereum swaps, or you can actually use Uniswap without having to pay $50 each time you add or remove liquidity. You can use Uniswap without having to pay $20 just to swap a token. You can use Curve.finance and lock things up and not be locked out for a certain period of time, because if you pay the gas fee, then suddenly you'll have no return on your investment. So these layer 2 solutions are going to be what's necessary for the next evolution of DeFi. And if you're trying to use DeFi, you should be using a DeFi system that is deployed to a layer 2 already. Now, if all of this is far too complicated for you or you don't quite understand, first I would say this is just a launching point.
I still don't understand.
Can you speak in present day English, please?
Right, it's to let you know the different kinds of services that are available and different sort of things that you can do. And then I would say investigate more. We'll be doing a series of videos on all of these services, deep in-depth guides on how to use them and why you would use them, as well as, on some layer 2s and how you would start interacting with layer 2s. But if all that's too complicated, you don't want to think much about it.
So what is it anyway?
Just tell me, please.
Then the easiest way to earn yield on your Ethereum, for instance, is just to stake. And there's basically 3 options that you have. The normiest option is Coinbase. So Coinbase will offer about 5% APR on your Ethereum for staking through them. You could also use Rocket Pool, which is a way to keep custody of your assets while staking, which is a decentralized staking protocol, as well as Lido.fi. And in all these systems, you're going to get about 5% for the Ethereum that you stake in the system. Some of them are going to require that your Ethereum is locked up until ETH 2.0 actually launches, and some of them you're going to be able to withdraw at any time. Lido, in fact, you can stake not only Ethereum, but also Terra and Solana. But I hope that was helpful. A quick overview of how it's possible to earn interest without getting too far into the rates. If you like this video, then go check out some of my hardware wallet reviews to figure out how to secure your assets when you're engaging in DeFi activities. Or click here to find out why you can't trust crypto YouTube. Goodbye. Goodbye. That was Richard Nixon, not Bernie Sanders.